Well, let's wrap up with a few questions that have been submitted to us, and we'll just trade some of these back and forth. I suspect many of you may have the same sorts of questions about what you've just heard. So let me start with the following one. Somebody has submitted that I have students who have no credit history and have been declined approval for credit before. What do I tell my students when they ask me how they're supposed to build positive credit history if they can't get approved for credit? It's always a tough one. That's one that we've grappled with for years. It's actually become a little more different in the wake of still another set of regulations that we didn't talk about today, but were passed last year that have tightened the requirements on issuing credit cards to young people. I would say the advice that I would give these days would be first to see if you can, to the student, would be to see if they can discuss a co-signer arrangement with their parents, to see if their parents are willing to co-sign on a credit card or other kind of loan for them in order to help them build credit history, and perhaps as an opportunity to jointly learn with a dialogue, an ongoing dialogue with their parents as they use the product. Being an authorized user on a card often can convey the same sort of advantage as well. Barring that, a secured credit card is one option that's available, especially to young people. If they can't prove income, if they're or otherwise have a checkered history that's caused them to be denied in the past, if they can marshal together a cash of, say, $500, most banks, especially large banks with credit card programs, will allow them to open up a secured credit card where they put that money on deposit with the bank holds it, often an interest-free account, and then will issue them a Visa or MasterCard type product that looks just like a regular Visa MasterCard to any merchant where it would be used, and allows them to begin building a credit history. The bank holds on to the deposit as collateral, basically, and once the customer gets to the point where they've demonstrated enough responsible payment history, you can graduate to a regular card and get your deposit back. So the secured card, although it's an obstacle in terms of pulling together sufficient funds to make that initial deposit, if you can do that, it certainly is a way to begin establishing a credit history. Another way would be maybe to obtain a small loan from a local bank or a credit union and pay it back regularly over 12 months in order to build some positive. All right, Shelley, would you like to take the next one?
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Staten. I'm glad you answered that question because it is definitely one that comes up in the classroom. Another question we have here is, how do you respond to students who do not plan to use credit? And this is another one that often comes up in the classroom. And a suggestion I have is to just ask the child probing questions on why they don't want to use credit, and just have them make a list of the pros and cons of having no credit versus a bad credit history. And really empower them to feel confident in their choice, but be sure that they understand the implications of what using absolutely no credit can mean for their future. So Dr. Staten, can you help us out and answer another one?
Sure. This question is the following. When you have a credit card and you have an authorized user, is the authorized user building their credit history as well? And can someone under 18 be added as an authorized user? So two parts. That's the main purpose of an authorized user arrangement, is to allow another person, obviously, access to the credit card, but it does get reported on that person's credit history. The difference between that and a cosigner is that the authorized user doesn't have a legal responsibility to repay on the account. Whether or not it can be issued to somebody under 18, I believe the answer is yes, but I'm not entirely certain about that. But certainly, authorized user status is one way to have positive credit history, assuming the account is paid on time as agreed, to have that account history be built into your credit history, and it helps build that history. So yes, it's an effective tool. Let me take another one here. Can individuals under 18 even have a credit history, and can they check their credit report? Well, as we know, 18 is the legal contracting age, and most lenders will not knowingly enter into a credit arrangement with somebody younger than 18. But it has happened, and it has happened often by accident. Sometimes it's happened without the person who is under 18 even knowing that an account has been opened in their name. And so the answer to this question is very much yes. You may have a credit history, and yes, no matter how old you are, you can always check to see if you have a credit report. And it could be instructive. Odds are that people under 18, if they go through the process through one of the bureaus or even myfico.com to obtain their credit report, they'll find that they don't have one. But once in a while, and we've seen studies that demonstrate this, people will discover that in fact they do have a credit history. And it could be for a whole host of reasons, and sadly some of those reasons are parents that open up accounts in their children's name when their own credit is tapped out and they need the opportunity to use somebody that has a clean credit history as a way to expand their own credit opportunities, and we've seen that happen before. So, it does pay to check, I suppose, even at a young age, although the odds that you're going to have something in your credit report are probably small if you're younger than 18. Shelley?
Thanks, Mike. That's a great question, too. I'm sure glad you're answering these for me. A question we have about pedagogy says, I have learners with a large variance in reading levels and speeds. How do you manage this difference in reading skills for the news headline activity? And that obviously is pretty reading intensive, and there's a lot of ways to still use this with students with low reading abilities. One way that I use this activity still with low readers is to give them the article the day before, have them take it home and read it, and give them the option to ask me any questions before I put them in the group. Especially with low readers, I make sure they're in a group that they're comfortable with so that they're not made fun of by their peers. We have a lot of master educators that also use the same activity with a video clip. So those are all ways to still engage those low readers into the news headline activity.
Great.
Go ahead, Dr. Staten. Yeah.
Okay, I'll take a couple here.
Okay.
Question: does requesting a credit score or report reflect as an inquiry on future reports? That's an excellent question, and there's a common misconception out there. Consumers can request their credit report anytime without penalty with respect to their credit scores. When a consumer requests their own credit report, it's called a soft inquiry or a soft pull. And those are tracked by the credit bureau, and they're required to do that by law, but they're tracked in a separate category. Credit scoring models only utilize what we call hard pulls or hard inquiries from businesses, other creditors with whom the consumer has some sort of relationship, with whom the consumer is in the process of applying for credit. Those are the inquiries that affect your credit score. So when you go to annualcreditreport.com and you look in the inquiry field on your credit report, you'll find two categories. You'll find the soft inquiry and the hard inquiry fields. The record of your own pull of your credit report will show up there, but that doesn't count against your credit score. So that in no way should inhibit you from checking your credit report and checking it as often as you like. All right? Another question: is a debit card considered a secure form of credit, and does it help me build my credit history? And the answer to that is no. The debit card product is not a credit product. It's linked directly to your checking accounts, and so all transactions occur either in real time or within a day or two of when you use the debit card at a point of sale, and the money is extracted directly from your checking account. There is no billing in the form of credit card statements as there would be with a credit card transaction. As a consequence, debit card ownership doesn't show up on a credit report. So many students often have the misconception that because they're using a plastic payment product, because it happens to just be plastic and it has a Visa card logo on it, that it's helping them build credit history, and that's not the case. If the plastic payment product with the Visa logo on it happens to be a check card from a bank or a debit card, check card is what many banks often call them, it's not being reported to the credit bureau. It's not helping them with their credit history. It's a very useful tool for making transactions, but it doesn't build a credit history. Shelley?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. That is definitely one the kids think they are building credit history for, so I'm glad that that was brought up today. Another pedagogy question is, do you have tips for computer lab management if students are creating one of the electronic comic options? And I sure do. And the first tip I have is to have the students make their script on paper or in a Word document before they get on the Go Animate or other comic creator site. This way I can assess their content even if the technology glitches, which we know happens a lot. Another thing I always do with comic creators or Web 2.0s that are really engaging for the students is I give them a set time limit before they ever start on the computer, because a lot of them will spend too much time with the animations and all of the looks rather than the content. So I always have them put the content in first and give them the time limit up front. And then a last tip for all Web 2.0s, including the comic one, is to have students log in with a teacher account so that you can have all of the creations in one area for monitoring, grading, and just to share so all of the kids can see their peers' creations. Okay, Dr. Staten, teach us some more. Here, I'm ready.
All right, one last question. Can we still get a free credit report each year from each of the bureaus? And is there something down the road that will allow consumers to get a free copy of their credit score? Two parts to that. Yes, absolutely, you can still get a free credit report each year from each of the three major credit bureaus, and you can do that through annualcreditreport.com. I believe that's the only way you can do it. That's the website that they were tasked by Congress to set up to facilitate that. One strategy for using that free report is actually to get ongoing information through the year about what's in your file would be to, in the first 4 months of the year, pick one of the bureaus and get your free report, say, from TransUnion. And then 3 or 4 months later, pick a second bureau like Experian and get your free credit report from them. And then to close out the year, 3 or 4 months after that, get it from Equifax as your final report. That way you've obtained reports from all three bureaus, but you've spread it out over the year so that if something is added to your files from, say, a national lender that's reporting to all three bureaus, you're going to pick up on it without having to wait a whole year until you draw your next free one. So that's what I would suggest is that strategy. As far as scores, this new disclosure rule was a major step forward for making it easier for consumers and certainly less costly for consumers to discover their credit scores. It's not perfect. It doesn't allow you to log into myfico.com any old time and pull down your FICO score at will. You can only do it if you've been subject to some sort of adverse action, either being turned down for credit or being offered credit terms on terms that are less favorable than those offered to the lender's best customers. But that impacts a lot of us, and it will certainly raise awareness on the part of consumers of credit scores. And I think the tension there in Congress, I mean, many consumer advocates have argued for years that the bureaus and scorecard providers ought to be required to allow consumers to peek at their own scores for no fee. And the tension, the pushback they get from the industry on that is that there are millions of dollars of intellectual capital and proprietary knowledge that go into building these scoring models, and the model builders are rightly afraid of giving that away for free. And sort of letting the genie out of the bottle, so to speak, in terms of their proprietary secrets, in terms of how those models are put together. So, you know, they've pushed back and resisted, and so far Congress has only been willing to take this important step here that's been taken this last year to broaden the disclosures to those folks who've been adversely impacted by something in their score. Beyond that, I'm guessing that we'll probably have to wait several years to see how the new score disclosures play, basically, what sort of consumer reaction we get to it, whether it's moving the ball forward in terms of consumer awareness of the factors that drive scores. And then it may be time to revisit it to see if additional regulation with respect to scores and possibly further disclosure of scores at a lower price is worthwhile or not. But I'm guessing that this is what we're going to see and what we're going to live with and adjust to for the next several years. All right. Well, we certainly appreciate you spending some time with us today in learning about credit reports and credit scores and the new disclosures and how you can pull this information into your classroom for your students. We would like for you to continue asking questions and offering opinions through the forum that's available on the FIFI website. We can continue this discussion throughout the fall, and not only with us, but with your fellow teachers around the country. Certainly take advantage of the FIFI website to access a variety of other resources that are useful for this topic and a host of other topics related to personal finance and would be valuable to your classes. And tell us what you think. You have the opportunity to, on the website for this webinar, to take a short survey and tell us what you liked and didn't like about the webinar format. We really do look at that information and value your input, and we use it to shape the way that we construct these webinars that we plan to offer in the future. Please join us again for future webinars. We do plan another one this fall on credit cards as the topic, and credit cards, the new regulations in the wake of the financial crisis of 3 years ago. We do plan additional contests that you and your students may be interested in entering, so stay attuned to that. And plan even further ahead to attend the FIFI National Training Event that we do every summer here in Tucson. It's a fantastic 3.5-day event. Next summer it'll be June 25th through June 28th. And we'd love to have you here along with 100, 150 of your colleagues from around the country for an in-depth treatment of how you move this material into your classrooms. So with that, I want to thank Shelley. I want to thank everybody who helped participate in putting this webinar together. Thank all of you for viewing it, and please join us again. Bye-bye.